Welcome to the Spirit of a Badass, where we celebrate stories of courage, hope, and resiliency. I'm your host, Alecia Jacobson. Hello to all my badasses out there today. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. And thank you to everyone who took the time to reach out and send me messages about the last episode. I have a little bit more pep in my step on this one, but I did appreciate the connection of everyone kind of reaching out and giving me feedback on that episode. It really helped to know we're not alone. I appreciated the dialogue and just kind of what it stirred up. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And today is kind of a piggyback, what has happened over the last week in my internal barometer, what I have processed and metabolized, and I'm kind of ready to start that one foot in front of the other. Last week, I was very much like, fuck it all. I got my nails done. It's a black color and it has like sparkle glitter in it. And I was like, this is my fuck around and find out. This is my rage color. And then the technician doing my nails brings out, like the dip color and sets it down. And you know how they're all named? This is named Peace and Happiness. So I was like, okay, isn't that interesting? I was picking this for the sort of anger that I was feeling inside, and it's called Peace and Happiness. So that was interesting and a little like, okay, how can I use this? Because I felt that was like one of those like universe messages saying, you can feel this way. And this is kind of where I'm bringing it in today is what is at your core. At your core is peace and happiness. I mean, over the years, every coach I've worked with, every therapist, all I've said is I just want to feel at peace. I want to have that peaceful vibe inside me. So that's kind of where I'm at, is how can I channel this frustration, rage, and confusion? How can I channel this into something bigger? So today I'm going to share with you kind of what I have picked up from other people, what I have been feeling myself, and I'm just going to let it flow through. The first thing that I've kind of been realizing, and I said last week how I went to my boxing class and I just cried. I cried. And if you've ever coached with me, you know that I talk a lot about completing the stress cycle. And I first learned about this from a book called Burnout. And it's written by, I believe, two sisters that are also doctors. They talk about completing the stress cycle. And what that essentially is, I'm going to boil this down. If you can look on YouTube, there's some great videos on exactly how to do it. But essentially, it's that you get this stress built up in you. And if you don't complete the cycle, meaning get rid of it, it just stays housed in you. And this can cause physical pain, emotional pain, all of this negativity that happens when you are unable to release the stress from you. And so my first offer to you would be, what does a healthy release look like for you? How can you move this frustrated anger, whatever it is that you're feeling that could be stagnant energy inside of you? How can you start to move through that, have it flow out of you and not let it get stuck in you? This can look like, dancing, singing, jumping. I was just working with a client a couple weeks ago, and she sees patients back to back to back to back. And she was feeling like this stagnant kind of low energy would build up on her throughout the day. So what we came up with was, in between each patient, she would go back, she would recenter herself on her, she does a kind of an intention for the day. So refocus her intention for the day, and then essentially shake, jump, or brush off the prior client. So what that can look like is some jumping jacks. It can look like actually just like standing and shaking your arms vigorously, kind of while jumping, or brushing vigorously. You start like at your shoulder and you brush all the way down to your hand, and you do the same thing to your other arm. You can do it to your chest and your legs, and you're essentially shaking off, brushing off the kind of ick feeling. That isn't necessarily the completing of the stress cycle. The completing of the stress cycle, the brushing one, I mean, I don't think that is, but the kind of vigorous shaking, that absolutely is. And the more that you can do this, that's why, those annoying people that tell you that you will feel less stress when you start exercising, me, that's what that is. My husband says this all the time. He's been exercising probably consistently for about 1.5 years now. And I will tell him, like, if something, there's stress in the house or whatever, I'm like, why don't you go just take the dog for a walk? He gets kind of mad at me when I tell him what to do. But then 100% of the time he comes back and he's like, thanks, I feel so much better. And that is completing the stress cycle. It is going out and moving it through you. So whatever healthy release looks like for you, that can also look like talking. I know so many of us have found community in just sort of purging the stuff. Now, there is a difference between sitting in the shit and when you're talking and expressing and not actually getting anywhere, you're just kind of floating around, which if you are still there, like I said last week, by all means, stay there if you need to, but don't stay there too long. And what your too long is different than my too long. So you have to know that for yourself. I heard somebody say, I gave myself a week. And if you gave yourself a week, that week is now past. So you decide what that looks like for you. But any way that you can, figure out a healthy release for what you're feeling with a coach, a therapist, a friend, moving your body, whatever that looks like. I painted some things and they were a little dark. I painted one yesterday I actually really liked it. It was kind of a black background, but then it had a person and their center was sort of glowing. And that was what I viewed this podcast that I was sitting with, that I wanted to share with you today. That was kind of the picture that was coming to mind, because yesterday I went to a yoga class and oh my gosh, first of all, I have been doing yoga. We're going to go down a little sidetrack here. I've been doing yoga for a long time, but I have been doing more of like a yin or a slow flow for like 1.5 years now. And I went and took one of the classes with one of the hard teachers and holy hell, I kind of forgot. I haven't pushed myself in that way in a long time. I didn't really want to do this hard of a class, and this is why this is relevant. And my friend asked me if I wanted to go because we usually box together, but she said, I really need some yoga. And it was this teacher that I absolutely love. And she goes, I know you're not really sure about her classes. And I'm like, well, that's only because they're hard. However, she always says something in the class that is like, oh, it shifts me and it makes you think differently. And while she said many things yesterday, one of the things she said that I absolutely held onto was, if you're feeling out of center, and I think that's what we're feeling. I think we are feeling out of center. I think our center, those of you who my podcast last week and this one resonated with, this idea that a person could be in such leadership power and have this ability to just be so cruel and, I mean, against truly to our very center and to our core, we disagree with. And we can't wrap our heads around how others could check the box and say, yes, I want you to be my leader. I want this for my future. I think that makes us feel out of center. I think it kind of knocks us off kilter. This is an invitation to come back to center. This is an invitation that even though you fell over, even though you got knocked over and disoriented, you know your center. This makes me think of like what makes you sparkly, what your superpower is, your hope that you have, whatever that is that you have at your very core that centers you, find that and come back to it. And that will guide you. I think that is sort of our light in the darkness that we bring to the people around us, that we bring to ourselves. But when things can get heavy and we're just confused, it can be easy to not see that and to not kind of have that readily available. And that is something that since I was in that yoga class, now I'm like, okay, yes. I mean, what is my center? What is my superpower? My superpower is using my voice, connecting people. On the last one, I shared how I was so up close and personal, and I hear it, the narcissist manipulation. I hear it. That is a language that I understand. one of the many things that I experienced, and I can't even remember exactly what it was. All I remember is I was with my kids at the pool, and it was summertime, and I had gotten it was either like just a nasty message, something I was always having to go through the court system. I don't remember what it was, but it was something. And I was like, I have to put something good out there. So something negative and bad came at me. And my response was I needed to create something good. So at that time, I created what was called a Blessings Boot Camp. And it ran for probably 3 to 4 months. Every Sunday, I had a donation boot camp. And it was you donate goods for people that did not have homes, people that whatever it was mainly for, I think, men were the main recipients of it. And there were sleeping bags, socks, you name it, coats, boots, all these things came pouring in every single week. And then I would go and drop this off. And the thing that pissed me off, the catalyst for this, had nothing to do with homelessness, had nothing to do with anything. But my response to my fuck you was I need to go put good out in the world because I just feel so right now. I'm so angry that I needed to create some goodness. I needed to come back to my center and create something. And that is what I've heard. I think a lot of people, when they're talking about go make something, go create something, I think a lot of people are talking about like when I did my watercolor painting or just kind of losing yourself in creativity. But my invitation to you is to really think about what is your superpower and how can you create something with that? How can you get more involved? And that kind of brings me to my next one, which is bring it in, bring it closer to home. When things like this happen, creating that center, that community, and building something, connecting. How can you find ways to do this? How can you find organizations to get involved in? How can you go out into the world and flex that superpower? Whatever it is, what I want to just offer is that there's this sort of pissed off rage that's happening. If you are this sparkly, just radiant human, I don't want that ickness covering up what makes you shiny and sparkly. Because what we really need now is people out there using their voice, flexing their superpower, creating so much motherfucking goodness in whatever way. I don't know. This is all still unfolding. Going back to my keeping your peace, literally my peace is not being kept. But I'm okay with that right now. I'm okay. I am okay using this rage flowing through me. And this, I kind of got to the point this week where I was like, okay, I'm ready to see other people's point of view. I'm ready to try to understand, to like make that sort of like, how can I make sense of this? How can I wrap my head around why these choices were being made? And, you have to be careful where you get that information from because you just have to be careful. So my invitation for you today is to come back to your center. And again, whenever that works for you, but just consider it, plant the seed of how can you harness that and use it to create goodness in whatever way that you do out in the world. And go make more of it while making sure that you are moving this negative energy, this pissed off energy. I saw a Reiki practitioner. This was my first experience with Reiki. This was, many, many, many years ago. And when she was talking to me, she goes, I see all of your ideas sort of like popcorn above your head. And what you need to do is take them, funnel them through your mind, and then shoot them out your heart. And that's kind of the essence of what I'm saying here today. Take all of this like pissed offness that is, up above you, around you, kind of just in your being. Think about it. Think about what you can do with this, how you can harness this, and then shoot that motherfucking shit out your heart. Shoot it out with the greatest superpower and go be you in the brightest, most beautiful way that you can. And just move through this. That is, if there's anything you take away from this, it's that you don't want this stagnant energy inside of you. You want to find a healthy release for it and move through that. And that can also be screaming. Watch your vocal cords though. But if you like yell, kind of that vigorous, like yelling, or I know that there are some kind of yogi meditation sounds that you can make that the vibration in your throat. This is way out of my league here. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I do know there is some sort of like vibration and sounds that you can make that create different energies and can move that stress from you. So try that. But I saw a quote, and I'm going to read you the quote. I will say I saw some pushback on when I actually followed. This was shared on a local, I think, yoga studio page that I follow. And then I followed it back to the original poster, and people were kind of giving her shit. But they're like, you're saying this, but don't you kind of support and, give words to these people who, voted for him? So I don't know, but I read it and I was like, this is how I feel. And it said, this is the quote: "We're living in two worlds simultaneously. One, the fall of Rome, and the other, a new renaissance. We need to be both death doulas and birth doulas, helping die peacefully the systems that need to die, and helping give birth to a wholly different kind of world." And this was Marianne Williamson. And I don't know how many people know this, but when I was studying to be a personal trainer, at the same time, I was studying to be a birth doula. And this idea of a doula is one of the things at my core. Even though I don't do this, I feel like I'm sort of just a doula for women. I help women walk through life, and I find the tools and the things that they need so that I can support them. And this idea of kind of straddling two worlds right now, and knowing that some of the systems that we know are going to die. And how can we do that? And how can we be witness to this in the most peaceful way possible? And then how can we help give birth to a whole new system? I read this quote and I was like, that really feels like it hits home. This idea of what we currently know as the world we live in is dying. And some things need to be dismantled in order to have that rebirth. And some things need to be burned down in order to have something more beautiful. I mean, I feel like I have burned my life down to the ground at different points in my life. And then the rebirth is so beautiful, and it can be so beautiful as long as that's done well. And I think if this is going to happen, that there's going to be things dismantled and a new kind of way of living, and the old is going to die. How do we, the people that feel so deeply, how do we show up? And I really think showing up with our superpowers, showing up with our desire to help humanity is the way to do that. And then coming together in community in order to just buffer that fall and then help to rebuild. Again, I don't know what all of this even means. This is just how I feel that things are going to unfold in certain ways, and how, even when I get pissed off, how I want to show up. So be where you are. Take the time that you need to heal, to understand, to ask questions wherever you are. Make sure you're having that energy, having a healthy release of that. Go ahead and look up the book called Burnout, Completing the Stress Cycle. I think that is actually one of the most magnificent things that I have read, because it gives science behind why it works. And then get involved in your community. That I really think bringing it close to home and focusing on what's important and how you can get involved, I think is going to be powerful. And it will make that feeling of kind of helplessness, which I think a lot of us feel right now, it will harness some of that and give us some of that power back that we feel that we're just like, what the fuck, that we lost. So, all right, my beautiful people, thank you. Next week, who the hell knows what I'll be on here talking about? I hope to have a whole list of things that I want to share with you. So I'm hoping
that I won't feel so compelled that I need to come on here and share kind of how I'm feeling. But, that's okay too. And if I do need to, I hope it's helpful, and I hope you're able to take bits of it with you and just live a really lovely, beautiful life.
Spirit of a Badass is a Lit Path Studios podcast and is produced by Jamie Gale and Alecia Jacobson. Music by Shane Ivers. We'll be back with another inspiring interview. Until then, keep your spirits high and your energy badass.